A very good afternoon to you. Now, Cabinet has finally given the green light for a blueprint to secure the country's energy needs. The Integrated Resource Plan proposes 9 interventions to ensure that there is adequate electricity for the next decade. The IRP is based on the least costly electricity supply and balance, provides an assessment of the envisaged energy mix for the country, this up until 2030. Now, government says that the plan will reduce reliance on a single or few energy resources and will be revised in line with the changing energy sector. This week, Eskom implemented stage 2 load shedding due to 5 generating units breaking down and a coal conveyor belt at Mudupi Power Station failing. Energy Minister Barry Drotsche is expected to give more detail on the IRP at a briefing which will be held tomorrow. Now, ratings agencies and investors say a secure energy supply is crucial for economic growth and policy. Now, for more on this, I am joined in the studio by Barry Drotsche, Divisional Head of Energy Partners, or rather Energy Partners Engineering. That's the name of the company. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Tommy. Thank you for having me.
Now, your take, your views, your comments on the IRP.
Look, so I think we have to be honest with ourselves. I don't think anything has changed drastically in the IRP from 2010. I think something like the REAP, which has been very successful, actually came from the IRP in that stage. So it's putting the right intent on paper, right? So we're saying let's reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, let's introduce more and more renewable energy. And I think we have to do that. That is the message that we need to send to the global community, the investor community. I guess from a practical point of view, it's just the intent is there. How is government going to make sure that they can actually execute on this intent?
And how confident are you on the level of implementation?
Look, so like I said, I think something like the Renewable Energy Independent Purchase Program, the REAP program, has been very successful, and that has given kind of the right message to the international investment community to say we are open for business, specifically when it comes to the diversification of energy. But I think there's counterproductive communication that's also coming out of government. I mean, we're looking at the fact that there was a round 4 of REAP and then suddenly Eskom decided not to sign those contracts anymore. And that kind of crashes down the confidence in the system again. That's one of the examples. I think the other communication that has come from government is to say, well, let's lift, there's currently a 1 megawatt threshold on embedded generation, let's lift that to 10 megawatts. So again, the right intention, but it's proven that the bureaucracy around getting to that point has just been hindering the process of unlocking renewable energy in the country.
And doesn't that seem to be the problem traditionally, the issue of bureaucracy? Right. How is that going to be circumvented in this particular instances? Perhaps you've got some insight on that.
Yeah, so I think South Africa is great at writing beautiful documentation. We look at our constitution, and again at the IRP as well. I mean, the intent is great, the content is great, but the execution part is really challenging. I think one part of the IRP that's really exciting, where I think a lot of value can be unlocked, is, and it's a small part of the IRP, but it's what they refer to as the SSEG, so the small-scale embedded generation. Now, small scale might be a bit misleading here because it can be as much as 10 megawatt that we can contribute. And this actually gives the opportunity to the private sector to invest in the generation capacity of South Africa. Now, we all know that there's a lot of capital that's just sitting in the coffers of corporate South Africa, and they don't know what to do with that right now. And I think something like embedded generation is something where you give free rein to the private sector to actually assist government in unlocking renewable energy in South Africa. And also, if you think about where the renewable energy is located around South Africa, it's in the Northern Cape, it's in the Eastern Cape, it's in the Western Cape, but the economic hub is actually in Gauteng, which is really a distance away. So you've got a lot of load sitting in between these generation capacities and where the load is actually required. So by moving some of that generation capacity actually into the metropolitan and the urban areas, you are assisting government and you're unlocking capital investment into the country.
But that also will require a huge cash injection.
Yeah, so I think the benefit of this, and like with the REAP as well, and I'm keeping referring to the REAP because I think that is what the IRP tries to unlock here, is foreign investment to bring private capital into the country, and it's been very successful. I think we've drawn investment of about 200 billion rand. We've generated close to 6 megawatts of generation capacity in the country. But the capital in this instance, when it comes to this embedded generation opportunity, actually comes from private sector. And I mean, that is what our company does. That's what Energy Partners does. We take capital and we invest in different generation capacities, effectively reducing the cost of energy to our clients.
Let's look at the role that solar energy could play within the IRP. Do you think it's central, and if so, why?
Definitely central. So if you look at the mix that is being introduced in the IRP, so like I said, there's a reduction in the coal part and then an increase in the renewable energy. So when you think about the broader picture, which is the IRP, we have to speak about renewable energy. So that is the solar part, that is the wind, the hydro, the biomass. And I think solar already plays a predominant role there. If you just look at what is the source of energy generation, it's the sun. And we've got plenty of that. So I think where solar really also comes to its right is in the embedded generation market. So it's very tough to put something like hydro or wind power in an urban or metropolitan setup. It's come with a lot of challenges. But PV or solar power is ideal for that setup, where you can create commercial and industrial kind of synchronizing with the IRP and actually contributing to the positive impact it could have in South Africa.
And as far as the cost implications of solar energy for the average South African?
Yeah, the past decade has been very exciting for renewable energy. I mean, in a global context, the cost of the technology has just come down rapidly. I think hand in hand with that is we've seen an increase in the viability, in the efficiencies of these technologies. And I think what is also very exciting is that capital structures are actually starting to play along with these technologies. So investors are willing to take a lower yield than to traditional asset classes because they know of the sustainable impact that it has. So all of this combination has really drove the price of renewable energy down, where we think it's very close, if it's not even beating the grid parity price, so the price that we're paying from Eskom at the moment.
And if you look at the future of solar energy in South Africa, I mean, with a lot of RDP houses that have been built in the past few years, you'll notice that some of them are actually built with the solar panels already on the roof. Do you think that we could reach a point where, as you say, they are a viable substitute for being on the grid?
So I think we have to be honest with ourselves as well. We need a Eskom, and I guess more important than that, we need a Eskom to be sustainable and successful. And the reason I say that is that renewable energy is a non-dispatchable source of energy. In other words, it generates during a certain period of day. You can't call on it on the middle of night. So we need the base load from someone like a Eskom or a private producer to generate that sustainable base load to us. And then we can add the renewable energy on top of that. So I think what the renewable energy does, it effectively decreases the cost of energy to the whole of South Africa. And I think it improves the reliability of the entire generation system. Something like solar PV or wind is a lot more reliant in terms of generation when you compare it to the boilers like we're seeing now. There's a lot of challenges, unplanned maintenance at Eskom. And planned maintenance at Kuberg. Luckily, they are still planning maintenance there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time this afternoon as we look at the IRP and the other options that South Africa has in generating reliable source of power. Thank you so much. Now, we do move on to some of our other stories, and we've been covering this throughout the day today as well.